Drunk driving accident on moped causes our client to receive an amputation on their finger and multiple serious injuries. Attorney does his homework and finds insurance when the officer found none. Welcome to this week's client victory call. My name is Shane Smith. I'm from Shanesmithlaw. Today we're going to be talking with one of our attorneys, Thomas from Shanesmithlaw. He recently settled one of his cases against the insurance company that we would consider a client victory. Great result for the case. So we're just going to talk about it here today. Thomas, what case here are we talking about?
Talking about a client, the initials TT. She was a 53-year-old female driving, actually riding on the back of a moped with a friend who didn't happen to mention to her that he had been drinking and was in fact under the influence of intoxicating liquor on October 13th of 2020. It's about 9:30 at night. She was riding on the back of a moped with him when his intoxication caused him to veer off the road, smack into a mailbox, launching her off the back and resulting in injuries that, obviously had to have her taken to the hospital. When she got to the hospital, there were pretty significant efforts that were being taken to keep her stable and her condition under control. She's placed in a cervical collar. She had a large laceration over her knee and multiple injuries to her right hand. They had to attend to her for 32 minutes of critical care time. And wow. What they quoted in their notes were that failure to initiate these interventions on an urgent basis would likely result in a sudden, clinically significant or life-threatening deterioration in our client's condition. So they did some imaging and they found that she had a comminuted fracture of her patella, an open fracture of the distal phalanx of her right hand, and a closed fracture of the phalanx of her finger. And they actually had to do a partial traumatic amputation of her right ring finger in the course of this. They also had the wound on her knee required numerous cleansing procedures. They had to get in there and wash it out, and it ended up resulting in an infection that required a skin grafting procedure. They had to take skin from her right lower leg and left thigh and place it onto that area above the knee to hope to have that skin grow back. And it was eventually successful, but she had to go back multiple times over the course of this. And obviously finger was partially amputated. So pretty significant injuries here.
I was going to say, that sounds like terrible injuries. I know that cleaning of the wounds is very painful. And if it got infected, it looks like, it was a stressful situation all around is what I would say. And potentially life-threatening if they didn't fix it.
Absolutely.
And then you also said she lost part of her finger, correct?
She lost part of her finger. Yeah, I don't know. She doesn't remember very much after she obviously was thrown from the bike. But I'm assuming when she came down, she had to somehow brace her fall and kept herself from having a significant head injury that likely would have taken her life. I know she had on a helmet here, thankfully, but it still resulted in pretty significant injuries to her hand, obviously.
It sounds like it. So how did the insurance company respond? Did they work with you in the beginning? Did they fight on liability and try to accuse our client of doing something? Did they, want to give all the money to the hospital? What was the big fight in this particular case?
There wasn't much of a fight with the insurance company once we found out that there was insurance involved here. The tricky aspect of this case was that when we got the report, and we went through the initial kind of triage of the case, we saw that the person who was driving the moped was charged with driving while intoxicated and also not having insurance. So when we see that and we don't see another liability company involved, only the person who's driving, most people I think would take a look at that and say, hey, there's nothing we can do here. There's no insurance. But we started digging a little deeper. We eventually found that he did have insurance. This was just a simple error by the responding officer, but an error that, if you're not doing your due diligence, if you're not doing your homework and doing an investigation yourself rather than relying on someone else's work, that I think, could have missed it easily and told this person that she didn't have a case.
But no, it sounds like it. And it sounds like that may have been the key, is finding that actual insurance. Because you're right, when it's not on the AR, it makes everything harder. And a lot of attorneys might would have just turned it down and said, I can't help you right away.
Yeah, and her name also wasn't on the AR as well. So this looked like it was just a, person on a moped riding by themselves and no passenger. And, we had to track down the police officer and get her name added as well. So there were kind of two errors here that, could have proved fatal if, we hadn't done our homework.
No, it sounds like through the investigation, the front part and fighting over those little things got you a great settlement on the back end is what I'll say.
Absolutely.
What do you think? What's the key thing you learned from this particular case?
I think it's something I think you can learn in every case and apply to every case is you got to do your homework. You got to make sure that you can verify what it says in terms of documentation. Here, I again, like I said that there was no insurance. It said there was no one else riding on this vehicle. But when we did our own investigation, we found that yes, there was insurance. And, I think the lesson from that is don't rely on somebody else's representations about the facts. You got to go there and investigate them yourself. So I think that's what we did here. And that's why we were able to get a good result.
Well, it sounds like, she should be very happy with the work you did on this particular case to find insurance, get the insurance company to accept her being there, and then get the recovery. So it sounds like a great job. To all our listeners, I want to say thanks for listening. Remember, if you're in pain, call Shane, 980-999-9999, or you can order our free book, The Victim Survival Guide to Car Accidents, at Shanesmithlaw.com. We'll be going over another case next week. Hope to see you there. And great job, Thomas. I know this client really appreciates it and got a great settlement here, whereas with a little less homework, she might would have got nothing. So good job.
Thanks.
980-999-9999. 980-999-9999. Shanesmithlaw. In pain, call Shane.